when I thought there could be no better conversation to have today than
Yeah.
in light of what's happening. So I'm excited for this.
I think it'd be a good one. It'd be a timely one, and like it would just. I like the idea of us bringing a little bit of reason and light to something that's kind of dark and fairly unreasonable at the moment. Like the talking heads and the constant commentary from people that aren't really qualified to talk about it, including I'm not qualified at all to talk about COVID-19. You know, not at all. I feel fairly qualified to talk about human behavior and what brings out the best in us. So, you know, that's where I'm kind of excited to have that conversation.
Yeah, me too. Well, I've got my pause mug. I'm ready to go. I'm taking a breath. Cool. So people are going to be, I think, loosely joining us. Some people will be here for the whole conversation. Some will pop in and out. I think that's great. I will leave the option for those who are here now with us. I will leave the chat box obviously open. Please pop in with questions. You can just say, yes, thank you. I loved that. We'll leave space for Q&A as we go. We have no planned script here. This is just, we're going to riff, and I trust that it will be useful, hopefully in more ways than one. And for those who are joining us too, we kindly ask just leave your video off. That way, when this is recorded and shared with lots and lots of people, it's just easier for people to focus on the conversation. We'll also make the audio available as we go. So there we go. That's my 2 cents. Let's kick things off. What's our first? What's that?
Do we have to? Do we have to do some work?
I know. Alrighty. Well, as we were just getting started, and you said, I do feel qualified to talk about human behavior, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I hope. I am in your year-long Mind Map Mastery program, which is all about coaching through neuroscience, but I really feel like it's neuroscience with coaching applied, and it's such a powerful program. And I'm in all the themes about the threat bucket and talking about why we panic and the ACC and human connection. And so when something like this happens on a global scale, and we're told to socially distance ourselves, and there's a lot of data coming at us very quickly, no pattern prediction, a lot of uncertainty where certainty was just a matter of hours ago, and the brain kind of goes, right? And we go, and then I've had clients reach out, go, I feel fine, but I'm doing weird stuff, or I mentally am able to see through this, but I find myself like feeling like I need to drive to the grocery store all of a sudden and buy weird shit that I don't even want to consume. Why am I doing that? So can you speak a little bit to like just overarching, what the heck, man? What are we doing, what we're doing right now?
I haven't got a clue. I haven't got the slightest clue.
Wait a minute.
I mean, it all kind of comes back to that triune brain theory stuff, right? Which is basically as we evolved into this human species that we now kind of recognize ourselves as, we never discarded the previous parts of the brain, right? So if you kind of follow through on this theory, which makes a lot, like any theory, it's a theory, but it's a really grounded one, and it's one that's based in a lot of evidence that kind of says, if you want to go back way back, right? Kind of, even before 410, right? Kind of, if you want to go way back before then, we were at some point historically, we were reptiles. We had kind of all those reptilian drives, and those reptilian drives were mostly about getting food, getting a mate, and fighting off anyone who was a threat to getting food and getting a mate. That was more or less it, right? And kind of that's where we hear the language of fight, flight, freeze, and all that kind of stuff comes in. That was that part of the brain. It was very, very simplified. The job of a reptile was to get fed so that it was bigger, stronger, fitter, faster, could go and find a mate, impregnate it, and kind of carry it, spread the genes, and then fight off anyone else who wanted to have a go, right? And it was just this repetitive cycle. And there's still that part of our brain within us. And what's really interesting is that when you look at the human brain and how it's kind of evolved over time, you see that kind of that aspect of the brain is still there, right? Kind of in the brain stem. And on top of that, then we kind of over time through the evolutionary process, you could say we started to evolve, parts of the species kind of started to break off into the mammalian part, right? Now, what distinguishes mammals from the reptiles is really the social aspect. Okay, so kind of whereas the reptilian aspect was kind of very solitary, fight, flight, freeze, kind of the mammalian aspect was all about connection and working in groups and communication and for the greater good and all of that kind of stuff, right? And then on top of that, the youngest and newest part of the brain, just a really, really thin layer around the kind of the outer edge of the brain, which is what we could now call our human brain. And our human brain is kind of all that deeper level cognitive stuff, but and certainly kind of the logical reasoning, although kind of, you know, many other species have got a high degree of logical reasoning. But what seems to kind of set us apart is our use of language as well as creativity. And by creativity, it's kind of that forward thinking, the ability to really predict, like, you know, if I put this on this, I could do something with it and create something that didn't exist before, and with that kind of intention. And what happens is that whenever we go into threat, whenever there is something in our environment that is a high enough level threat to us that kind of makes us think, oh shit, right? Kind of, you know, like COVID-19 and all the stuff that's going on at the moment, we revert back effectively to our reptilian brains to a high degree, right? It's mine. I got to get it. Kind of, I'm gonna fight you in the aisles for toilet paper, right? I'm gonna kind of grasp and grab at all the kind of shit off the shelves that I don't really need, but I don't know why I want it so bad, but I'm gonna take it. This is where all of those kind of highly reactive behaviors come. So that's really the kind of essence. And when I use the term threat, what I mean is a lack of prediction or an extremely negative advanced prediction, right? So there's two ways to be in threat. You can either have no prediction at all, you go, shit, I don't know what's gonna happen. Or you can have made your mind up in advance, this is going to be so bad, right? And regardless of which one of those eventualities, your brain says, oh my God, I don't have an adequate response for that. Panic. And that's where fight, flight, freeze comes in. And that's where all things like our mammalian responses, the kind of the desire and need to communicate and hug and be friendly with people and all of that kind of stuff, and also our human responses, the requirement to self-actualize and kind of say, what could life be like for me in the future? All of that's out the window, and we revert back to kind of little reptiles scurrying around, fighting everything, and kind of wanting to keep everything to ourselves.
Yeah. So if you find yourself in the grocery store aisle grabbing for things that you've never purchased, eaten, or had in your life, and for whatever reason the compulsion to purchase it is there, be kind to yourself.
Right.
Be kind to yourself.
Right. And there's actually, along with that, right, I've done this for years now, is I actually specifically use that language with myself, right? If I'm engaging in something, and then that momentary flash when you realize you're being a dick, right? That momentary flash when you realize, it's a technical term. It's neuroscientific term.
Very
right?
serious.
but that momentary flash, I remind myself that I use the term, I'm going reptile. I actually say, I'm going reptile at the moment, right? And it's a like a pattern interrupt that right, you're really, there's no blame or shame or guilt or judgment or criticism. It's just an awareness. Oh, I've slipped into a different part of my brain that simply has different needs. Yeah. The human me would never say that. The mammalian me doesn't want that and doesn't even recognize that within my value structures, right? But which means that I must be in a different brain center.
Yeah.
And as soon as I'm aware of that, I can start asking myself the questions to say, how do you get back to who you said you'd be? And that's really, really important.
Let's speak to the human in each of us for a second, and then we'll speak to the human coach in each of us and the role we get to play, and some language that I borrowed from your program around lending out our human brain. But before we can do that, we have to be in our human brain. And you spoke very shortly at the start here about the difference between preparation and panic from the background that you have. Say more about that.
Yeah. So obviously I come from, originally I come from a military background. And a big part, this is, I was involved in some really kind of high level units. But this is taught to all soldiers, right? Regardless, airmen, sailors, all the rest of it. And it's actually about preparation. It's about actually understanding that the cure, the kind of the counter to the in the moment panic is always about preparation. And I want to be clear, I don't mean, we spoke about this, and there's nothing against preppers, but I'm not talking about kind of extreme high levels of kind of be prepared for anything and all that kind of stuff. It's actually really, when I think about preparation, there are three questions that I'm constantly asking myself about being prepared for anything, right? But literally anything. And at the moment, it's COVID-19. As you know, I was in the tsunami, but it could quite as easily be getting lost in the mountains on a hiking trip. It could be anything, right? And the very first thing I bring myself back to, and this is the keystone of all preparation, is the question: who did I say I'd be when this happens? Who did I say I'd be when this happens? But that could easily go, we're as readily and on an everyday basis, we could be in, the threat could be coming from something in our relationship with our spouses, with our partners. It could be something with our kids. It could be something with colleagues. Who did I say I'd be when this happens is a form of preparation, because it reminds you, okay, come from that place. And it's not about goody, positive thinking, any of that kind of stuff. It's saying, I decided a long time ago, when this threat wasn't happening, I decided long ago that when I'm in the midst of the shit, when the water is up to my neck and all the rest of it, this is who I'm going to, I may not guarantee to be, but that's who I'm going to try to get back to being. And that's probably the most important part of preparation, right? Is deciding who we're going to be. The next question down from that would be, what did I say I would do when this happens? Right? And that has to follow the previous one, because very often people go the opposite way, and that you can see the difference in panic, right? Panic is, what do I need to have? What do I need to do? And if you get around to it, you think to yourself, well, who am I going to be now? Right?
Right.
But to be really prepared, if you want to stay in your calm, your centered, your very human aspect of the brain, is, who did I say I'd be? What did I say I would do? And in order to do that, what did I say I would have? Right? And you reverse engineer the pathway. But, I don't know if you can feel that, but as you're sitting there and you think, you know what, if I decide that basically I'm going to go out into, like any family at the moment, we've got a large family living here. There's 6 of us under one roof here in this house at the moment, right? There's, if we're going to need a lot of food, but we're not going out. The very first thing I said is, when all this kind of stuff happens, who did I say I would be? Well, I'm not going to be the guy who goes to a supermarket, takes more than I need today and leaves everybody else with nothing. So I would rather be the person who goes every day, inconvenience myself, inconvenience my family a bit, but go every day, standing in the queues, take a fair amount for myself so that other people can take a fair amount from themselves, right? That's a decision in advance, right? Based upon that. So what will I do? Okay, I'll go daily instead of filling up a truck once, right? What did I say? And what did I say I would have? That also informs the kind of things that I'm buying to bring into my home right now. What did I say I would have? And a lot of it I already had. And other bits like, okay, well, it becomes very simple. We're not panicking here. We're just being realistic about the situation. But we're saying, so who are we going to be? What are we going to do? What are we going to have? And the flip side of that is also, who are we not going to be during this? What are we not going to do during this? And what don't we need? What are we not going to have? Right? Most of the people that are caught up in the panic are going at things the other way. What do I need to have? What do I need to have? And they don't even know what they need to have, because they haven't even sat down with a pen and a bit of paper, right? But they are sure that they need like Marmite and blackstrap molasses and like all kinds of stuff that they've never ever bought in their entire life, right? But they've decided that they need it. And 4 million rolls of toilet paper, right? Just because basically when they do find me dead in my garden, I want to have the cleanest butthole in the world.
Hey, we can have levity, right? There's plenty of that.
Right.
Yes.
But panic is built the other way around. Panic starts with, what do I need to have? What do I need to have? What do I need to have?
Yep.
Right. But a calm is coming in from, who do I need to be? Who do I need to be? That will inform what I need to do. Okay. In order to do what I said I want to do, what do I need to have in order to do those things? And it becomes much more logical, calmer. And the human brain loves this. It's like, okay, great. You've given me some predictions, responses.
Yep.
I can work with that.
Yeah.
But when you decide first and foremost, I need to have X, and you go to the supermarket shelves and X isn't there, panic. All your brain says is, oh my God, zombie apocalypse and the world's going to end.
What is it about that question, who do I need to be, that takes us to a more predictable way of thinking, or a more calm level of thinking?
Well, I think it's powerful for all people, particularly for coaches who generally, by and large, have spent a lot of time thinking about who they are in the world and who they want to be and what their values are and what their greater beliefs are, right?
Yeah.
So it's extremely grounding in a time when everything is turbulent and shaky and rocky, and it's very easy to get caught up in the sway of kind of the herd mentality and dragged off.
Yeah.
It's the fastest way to quite literally get back to being yourself, because all those other behaviors, like, we are all of our brains, we are all a reptile, we are all a mammal, and we are all a human, right?
Yeah.
And there is a place for all of those, like in the middle of something really, really violent, and something happened, you be glad you've got the reptile there. But you don't want to live as a reptile. You don't want to go day in, day out as a reptile, right? And so this question, who do I want to be, does is it brings you back to what you already decided. And for most of us, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions of that idea already laid down. And it only needs a little reminder to come back to it, right? And along with that reminder is that, when I think, who did I decide I'd be, right? Obviously, if there is a massive threat in front of me right now, my brain will just go, screw that. You don't need to be that guy who's going to sit there and meditate this morning. You need to be the guy who's going to kind of, do what you need to do to get through this thing. But most of the time, it's just going to simply remind us that we already have all the plans that we need. Us coaches, we love to say the answer is within you. Mm-hmm. The answer is within us because we've prepared and we've rehearsed it so many times. And that is just really asking you to go back to your script. Really, like, if you want to put it down to that, what was the script you already wrote for yourself? Go back to that. Because the worst thing you can do is start playing out the herd script, because the herd is always going to panic.
Yes. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I could feel it as the weekend progressed, and then we came into the week, and there was like this little tiny momentum around herd mentality that started to shift and then compound and then compound and then compound. And I think the toilet paper example is a perfect example of what herd mentality looks like. And even walking the aisles and seeing them empty, and it triggered a part of you to go, whoa, was I supposed to participate in that? And did I miss something? And then you start to question your own ways of being when you don't participate, because not participating goes against some of our wiring. And I could see how the situation we're in is like the perfect storm to light up not just fear, but social isolation fear and disconnection fear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that herd mentality thing. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So herd mentality comes obviously from our mammalian brain, right? Mammals, herds, right? And really, there's several parts of the brain, but kind of I always like to draw people back to the anterior cingulate cortex, which is about acceptance, connection, and care, right? But on top of that, it's our greatest, what you could call error detection mechanism in the brain, right? Mm-hmm. It says, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing things the right way? Am I doing it the wrong way? And because we are mammalian in that part of the brain, it looks to everybody else and says, well, what's everyone else doing? Mm-hmm. Shit, they're all running north and I'm going south. Right, really, should I be running north? Right? Yeah. They're all buying toilet paper and I'm not. Should I be, right? Yep. And the brain treats going in opposition to a degree as an error. It says, if they're all doing that and you're doing this, right, surely 100,000 people can't be wrong. And you're the only right one, right?
Right.
And actually, in fact, you might be the only right one out of 100,000 people. It's very, very possible that you are, right? The only way we kind of really get to know whether, and if we take away rights and wrongs and all the rest, and come back to my favorite word here, which is skillful. Mm-hmm. The only way we know really if we're engaging in skillful action is by comparing it against the stuff that we already decided about ourselves in advance. So it comes back to the previous point, right? Yeah. Who did I say I would be? What did I say I would do? And I understand, like, people may not have ever kind of said to themselves, I mean, this is the kind of question I have asked myself over the years about pandemics and epidemics and sicknesses and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Many people may not have done that kind of role play in their mind, but they have certainly done the kind of role play that says, who do I want to be like when the shit hits the fan? Like, how do I want to imagine myself? And we kind of know. All you got to do is watch a few movies and look at the characters you most resonate with in times of emergency, and you go, oh, I would love to meet myself as that person, right? And then you look at the bad guy or the whinger or the one who's causing trouble for the group, and you go, oh, I hope I'm not that person when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So we kind of know who we want to be. We pretend we don't, but we kind of know who we want to be. And really it just comes back to kind of reminding ourselves of that, and then basing our decision about what the herd is doing through that lens, not through who you are right now in the sense of panic, but through who you said you would be. Look at what the crowd is doing through that. And go, okay, through the lens of who I said I would be, how the crowd is behaving right now, that's not what I want to do. That's not how I'm doing things. That's not how I'm going to show up for the world.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it's I'm not saying it's easy for 1 second. I'm not saying particularly when you're caught up in the throes of panic, but understand that at the moment, like the very real reality, the kind of, I'm going to jump the gun here a little bit, and fingers crossed, I hope like nobody has had any bereavements as a result of this. Anyone that's watching this, right, has had any bereavements. But the truth is, the reality is, most people who are engaging in the herd panic haven't lost anyone, haven't had anything really bad happen to them, haven't had any indication that anything really bad is about to happen to them. But the herd is telling the story, right? And we all respond to stories. We all respond to that social narrative that kind of says, shit, there's something really, really bad coming down the pike. And there could be. But the reality right now is, and this is how you get yourself back to calm. You look around yourself and say, is it happening right here, right now? Like I'm sitting here on this video with you. Yeah. I notice that there don't seem to be starving hordes beating down my doors to rob my house of food. I notice there don't seem to be dead stacked up in the streets or any of that kind of stuff. So I have to if you want to kind of get out of that reptilian mind, you bring yourself back to reality and actually look at, literally, if it takes you stopping and looking around you and going, no, it's not happening now. It's not happening here.
Yep.
And you can do that 1,000 times a day, like going to the supermarket. Someone's being a dick. It doesn't actually mean that the end of the world is coming. It means that somebody in the supermarket is being a dick. But we can turn that into, oh my God, like it's all happening, right?
Yeah.
It's just, this is where the data versus the drama comes in, right? In moments like this, it's really easy to get dragged into the drama. But come back to the data. There's somebody over there being rude and abusive to people in the supermarket. That doesn't equate to this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
And just reminding ourselves of the reality.
Yeah. Can you share what data versus drama is? Because I love your description of drama, and I love your description of data that you've shared with me.
Yeah. So data is the fact-based evidence of things that are around you happening in the world right now. Right. So like I said, I'm sat in this room, I'm looking out on my garden at the moment. I'm not seeing all the badness in the world, and I'm not seeing all the disease and sickness and the potential what could go. This is the data. The data also says that there is something going on out there. But as far as I'm aware with the data right now, it really is out there, and it's quite a bit away from me. Right. Doesn't mean I'm not going to take all the necessary precautions and all that kind of stuff. It just means this is what the data is telling us at the moment. The drama is when we start to fantasize, and drama can be both good and bad, right? Kind of every thought you ever had about buying the place that you want to buy, and the house on the hill, and the holiday place, and the vacations you want to take, all of that is also drama, because it's not real. It's not fact. It's not data. It's stuff you're going to do in the future. So it's a form of drama, but a drama that serves you and that you enjoy.
Yeah.
There's also the other form of drama that is kind of like building a preemptive nightmare into our lives. It's not happening yet. I'm not even certain it is going to happen, but I'm going to act like it happens. And during that entire time, basically, I'm going to go reptile for several months, even though most of this isn't affecting me other than a shortage of toilet paper and a few other things, right? But I'm going to actually treat it like it's actually in my world, happening to me right now. Now, heaven forbid it does happen and it does come into your world. But even then, when it comes into your world right now, it's better for it to come into your world now and experience it now and get it over and done with, versus live it for 3, 4, 5 months, panicking about what might, maybe is going to happen. And that's more than anything. I said to you before we got on this call, I'm not a coronavirus expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to do anyone the disservice of advising them anything to do with the coronavirus. What I do consider myself to be is quite an expert on human behavior, both through my education and through my experience of doing this now for 21 years. And so I'm more interested in people getting back to skillful human behavior during times that are stressful and potentially threatening. Now, one of the things that the army has going for it and the armed forces have going for it is that they train you for exactly that, right? They train people to be able to say, okay, well, there's bullets and bombs and everything else, and I still need to get my head up and carry out the mission and do everything. And if a soldier can do that, we can all do that, because a soldier is one day a soldier was a civilian and didn't know anything about that, and one day they came out of boot camp and they said, I can get through this. The only difference was how they conditioned themselves and how the organization they're part of conditioned them along the way. We can all do that.
Yeah. That's a great segue into being the human coach and how we can lend out our human brain. Before we do, I want to hit pause, since we do have people here live with us. If you want to ask a question about anything that has been shared or anything that hasn't been shared so far, we do have a question from Paige who said, can you explain why the triune brain theory is a theory and not a fact? I thought it was a fact in that this is how the brain developed and what these different aspects of the brain govern. So why is it still a theory?
Well, because like with anything, because there are some people that refute it, there are some people that say, well, like from most of the work that I've been through, most of the reading that I've been through, most of the scientific literature is in agreement with the idea of theory. But there are very few things that actually get truly established as fact in science anyway, because the data is always changing, right? There really, I think that's about all I can say about that without, because I'm more or less going to say the same thing over and over and over again here, which is kind of there are some kind of offshoot conversations about how the brain might have developed and all the rest of it. But the best working model we've got, and pretty much everyone who's anyone in the world of kind of brain science and neurobiology are pretty much using that model.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Shauna said, I think you're just about to go there, but what do you define as skillful human behavior, if that is the goal? It's a good question.
So skillful human behavior, I really like the simplicity of this model that I use. It's the answer to the question, given what I wanted to happen, did my behavior, did my actions, did my thoughts, did my words make that happen to a greater or lesser degree, right? So I'm skillful to a degree. If I said, I want to get through this next couple of months as calm, as peaceful, as healthy as I possibly can, maintaining my business as well as I can, maintaining my relationships as well as I can, and making sure that kind of, I'm serving all the people that I've dedicated my life to serving. If I say that, and that actually happens, I can say, I was skillful. If I go, oh shit, and I shut everything down, don't speak to anyone, don't serve anyone, try to capitalize on my marketing and start kind of say, hey, everybody, you need my shit and you need it today. And I start showing up as someone else, that's less skillful. And that idea of skillful, unskillful can be related to anything. It can be related to your diet and your nutrition. Given what I said I'm trying to accomplish with my diet and my exercise, that I want to lose X number of pounds or be able to do this kind of thing, is the approach I'm taking to making that happen skillful or unskillful? Sit on the sofa with 2 pints of Haagen-Dazs and kind of a 6-pack of beer every night, probably unskillful behavior given that I want to lose 30 pounds. Right? That's really, I bring that measure into everything. Like, given what I am trying to accomplish, is what I'm doing making it more or less likely? More skillful, less likely, unskillful.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a good gauge. And it simplifies something that I think we can get too far down the track on without coming back and saying, well, what was the goal? Did I orient myself in the direction of the goal? If I did and it still didn't happen, that's a different conversation, right? And skill isn't, as you talked about, skill isn't a lack of motivation or a lack of will or a lack of even ability. It's something entirely different.
Some of the most motivated people I know are engaged in really unskillful behaviors.
Yeah.
They are smash bash thrashing themselves into shape. They're declaring war on their bodies to get them into shape, and it never happens. And they're full of injuries and they're sick and they're run down and their immune systems are really low, right? But they're still engaging in the behaviors. That's unskilled. It's not getting what they want. So, it's motivation has definitely got nothing to do with skill or anything else.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. All right. So keep the questions coming. We'll keep going. Let's talk about being the human coach. So in your program that I'm in, you made it wasn't even in the content. You made an offhanded comment, as you often do, that are like brilliant Dax bombs. I have to pause and write everything down. And boom, one of those. And you said something like, your role as a coach is to lend out your human brain. And I really loved that. And I paused and I wrote down and I reflected on it. And I wrote an article about it that went out last week. And I got a fair amount of feedback of people just, saying, thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the perspective. But I think you could speak so much more clearly to it than I could. What do you mean when you say we have to lend out? That's our role as a coach, whether it's in the middle of a pandemic or just a day at the office as a coach, the role is the same.
Yeah. So look, first off, this is coming from the framework that I think like most coaches do, that the client has. I don't believe the client has all the answers. I believe the client has most of the answers, right? There's plenty of things in the world that I don't know yet, so I can't possibly have all the answers. But I believe they have most of the answers to the solutions they're trying to create. And the very simple reason that they're not accessing them, in other words, the reason that they're saying, I want to go north, and they keep walking south. They're saying, I want to lose weight, and they keep eating Haagen-Dazs. They're saying whatever. Mm-hmm. The reason they keep acting in opposition to that is because they're out of their human brain, right? They're in one of the other brains. And for most of us, most of the time, we've reverted into our mammalian brain, right? We jump into the herd and we get upset by what he or she did or didn't say, the look they gave us, the subtext and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
That's where we tend to get lost. So when I say the job of a coach is to lend out our human brain, what I'm really saying is we're lending out our prefrontal cortex to do the work that yours should be doing, not to give you the answers, mm-hmm. but to actually ask the questions that you would probably be asking yourself if you were in your human brain. Why is this pissing me off so much? Why am I so upset by that? Why is this really, really kind of grabbed me by the throat at the moment? Why is this thing happening over and over again? Right? And the only reason we can't see that is because we're in parts of the brain that aren't responsible for figuring out things and looking at logic pathways, which is left prefrontal cortex, and looking at future pathways of what potential outcomes are, which is right prefrontal cortex. So what we're saying is, if we lend our prefrontal cortexes to our clients and we say, you know what, my job is to effectively be a surrogate prefrontal cortex for you, right? You can borrow mine. Mm-hmm. Borrow mine. What that really means most of the time. Now, I'm not a coaching purist where I say we never give people advice, and I know some people are really down that line, but I'm not a purist. But 80 to 90% of the time, I use my prefrontal cortex not to provide answers and examples and pathways of ways that you could go. Mm-hmm. At least not until we've exhausted other aspects, right? And instead, I use it to actually bring up the things that, from the position of my prefrontal cortex, I wish your prefrontal cortex was asking you.
That's great.
Right?
That's a good perspective. Yeah.
Right? Like, I wish you were asking yourself this at the moment. Because you're not, let me do it for you. Right? And for me, that's really what this means, of kind of being the person who's, I'm making I don't believe a coach's responsibility is to help you achieve your goals. I don't believe that at all for 1 minute. I don't believe a coach's responsibility is to set them, to hold you accountable to any of that. That's not within. Now, if anyone listening to this does, I'm not arguing with you. Like, please do it your way. Do it the way you want to. I'm talking about Dax Moy's framework. I don't believe that's my job, right? I believe that if you were back in your human brain, mm-hmm. you would achieve that. You would set the best goals for yourself. You would commit in the way you need to commit, and you would maintain, and you would actually achieve the things that you set out to achieve. So I see my role is constantly to look out for any and all indication that you're not in your human brain, and lend you mine and nudge you and say, let's keep having this conversation until you are back in your human brain. So I don't do accountability with people, and I don't chase people up for what, it doesn't mean I won't reach out to them and ask them things, but kind of, it's not all of the things that typically people see as the remit of a coach. I don't. My job from a neurobiological, from a neuroscientific perspective, is to keep asking myself the question based upon how Andrea is presenting to me, what she's asking me, how she's showing up, mm-hmm. the action she is or isn't taking. Do I believe right now that she's in her human brain in this topic?
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay, let me guide her back to human. Right? Or
Yeah.
yes. Okay. And if yes, then we're just two humans shooting the shit and having a conversation, right? We're just figuring stuff out and having a really pleasant time, like
Yeah.
we are right now. But
Yeah.
if you're not in your human brain, it's not my job to say, well, if you just knuckle down a bit more and you get a clearer goal and you have a big enough why, and that's not
Yeah.
within the model.
Yeah. I think too that, at least in my experience, knowing what a client is or isn't in the human brain can be a bit nuanced, because a client can come in and it's not going to be as obvious as they come in panicked. Occasionally, maybe a client will come in and I had a few crisis calls yesterday with clients who are shifting. They're shifting a lot in their current reality for the next few weeks or few
Mm-hmm.
months. And that requires a whole pausing and reorienting. But most of the time clients come in and they might vent, or they might be frustrated about something, but they're not going to explicitly demonstrate threat in the way that we might imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or they're going to come in and talk about fears of rejection or fear of criticism, or worthiness, or how do I know when I'm ready? And when we coach them, I know for me at least, it's recognizing that's not human brain behavior. And it can be a little bit more nuanced. So what are some other signs that a client's not in their human brain?
Yeah. Great question, actually. Right. So, I mean, there are lots of indicators, quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I always look to is emotion, like the presence of emotion in an unskillful way. You could say kind of an impairing kind of way. So look for emotion. You can also look for change, like particularly if you've got an ongoing relationship with someone, changes in the way they use language, changes in the way they use words. Very often they'll become monosyllabic. The sentences become extremely short.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes a higher level of prefrontal cortex cognitive ability to engage in ongoing dialogue. So the responses will often get a lot shorter. There'll often be kind of arbitrary yes or no's. There'll be a lot more can't. There'll be a lot more kind of that won't work, and a lot more what most people would call negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So the bias, most people, we all have a bias. Some people sit dead center of the spectrum of positive, what people would call positive and negative. Mm-hmm. Some people have a slightly, stronger negativity bias. They're naturally a bit more what we would call pessimistic, but because that's their natural space, it doesn't mean, like, within the scope of their lives, they're not necessarily pessimistic. That's their normal. Mm-hmm. So if you see them go down from that even further, likewise, if you see a normally positive person, they may actually be kind of sitting in vanilla land, like right in the middle of the spectrum, right? Kind of. But if they're normally bubbly and up and all the rest of that's something to watch out for. So mm-hmm. Pattern languages, kind of their kind of use of specific words and phrases. But you can also be paying attention to their physiology. Like, again, this is based upon how they normally communicate with you. But what I find most people, particularly when I'm doing this kind of work like we offer mm-hmm. video, there generally tends to be, even whilst we're not actually eye gazing, because the eye gaze we'd have to look up into the camera mm-hmm. up here, right? There generally tends to be sort of like a sense of eye contact. Mm-hmm. And what you'll find is that people will start kind of shifting. They'll look away a lot more. You may actually find them physically comforting themselves more than they normally do, like holding on, stroking, mm-hmm. comforting, tapping. So mm-hmm. these physiological indicators. You may also find that they are needing that, like they're talking out their breath and then needing to catch. So, right. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these are very physiological aspects, and you can see it in their posture, kind of stuff like that. But typical fight, flight, freeze, really, right? So mm-hmm. some people who are normally open become quite evasive, or they become very stilted. Or you ask them something, and someone who's not normally very combative will start hitting you back with "yeah, but," and there's a tone behind it and an energy behind it that isn't normally there. Mm-hmm. So this is why that whole really knowing your clients, not just having a notebook full of words about what we said when we were on the call today. Like I'm interested in who is the human in front of me right now. What are you signaling to me? Are you calm? Are you tense? Are you breathing fast? Are you talking out until you're out of breath? All of these kind of things. And once I establish your baseline norm, if I say, oh, well, that's how Andrea always is, mm-hmm. right? Because some people that's just their normal. Mm-hmm. And then I'm looking for baseline changes in your normal when I meet you on future occasions.
Oh, I love that. I never thought that's so simple, but I never thought to, I mean, take notes, not just on what's being said, but how it's being communicated and how the client is communicating. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, remember, verbal is only part of, depending on whose stats you use, but verbal is somewhere between 20 and 35% of communication.
Yeah.
And so if as a coach, we're ignoring all the other cues,
Yeah.
it's very, if I sit here and go, yeah, everything's great, it's all going right, fine today, right? And like, if that was our first call, you wouldn't have anything to go by, but how animated I am, how I normally like to joke and tell off-color jokes and drop F-bombs into things and all that. And so if I suddenly sit here very formal and just giving you yes, no answers, there was something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's really a big part of like being able to, or at least I believe, using my framework to coach really, really skillfully is to look at the whole person. Because very often coaches use the term holistic. Oh, I do holistic coaching. But what we're talking about is I look at their health, their relationships, their money, right. But being a holistic coach is actually about looking at the whole person in front of you and actually kind of saying, who are they normally when they show up? And do most of us even have baseline data for that? Or are we just recording the words that they've said? So important.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Always good information comes out of your head. I really appreciate it. It's always it's always just a nice little reminder to bring back these tiny little things, but they can make such a huge impact in the work and what we're able to access in the work just by paying attention to something that maybe we were blind to, in the previous conversation.
And they really do make a difference. But what I'm always reminding myself, see, because I'm quite a selfish guy, what I'm always reminding myself of is this is how I get to enjoy coaching more. Like I genuinely want to serve you when we're coaching. I want to serve you, right? But I enjoy coaching more when I can see that I've served you, when I experience myself as having been of service.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of this stuff, this is great because it just says, well, really, like in order to be a world-class coach, in order to be really brilliant at this, all I've got to do is figure out ways that I'm enjoying my coaching even more than I already am. That's fantastic. Win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Even being, I mean, you've been in this a lot longer than I have. I think I'm going into my 10th year, and there's been some lulls in there of like peak joy and sort of a level of vanilla contentment. I can do it, not really engage with it. And in the last year, really reconnecting with it. And the coaching didn't really change. The subtleties and the conversations and the types of conversations that are happening hasn't really shifted. It's all been in what I'm bringing to it or what I'm looking for that I wasn't looking for before. And it's amazing how fascinating it can be. Every conversation feels new.
I'm always reminding people that it's not what you do, it's who you are when you do it that determines the outcomes, right? Like it's not the food that you eat, it's who you are when you eat it, right? So it's not the kind of the movies you watch, it's not the training, like none of those things. It's just who we are at the time when we're engaging it. That's what determines the quality of our life. And really that's just another way of saying, are you in your human brain when you're doing it?
Yeah.
Because if you're in your human brain when you do it, you're going to have a lot of joy. Right? If you're kind of in your reptilian brain, the stress brain, the overwhelmed brain, the I've got to, I should, I have to, I must, you're not going to enjoy any of it. And you may actually do the exact same actions and not get any of the benefit.
Yeah. Because there's probably going to be questions about that. I think you need to say more because, and it's not the first time I've heard that statement. It's not what you do that matters. It's who you are when you're doing the thing that will literally matter. It's so easy to miss that point, but it is the doorway to everything, I feel like. But you just said it could determine the quality of your life 100%. Is there more you can say about that?
Yeah, well, because look, you think about it. When you are stressed, right? So let's say who you are while you do this thing is stressed.
Yeah.
Who you are while you're doing it is going to mean, like, if I am stressed, I'm going to be releasing more cortisol, maybe more adrenaline. So quite literally on a physiological level, I'm a different person than I was 10 minutes ago. Yeah. I start doing it because who I am is basically the totality of all of my endocrine responses, my neurological responses, my various physiological, right, everything. And now suddenly this new hormone has been injected into my bloodstream. I'm effectively a different human being right now. I mean, I'm a different person.
Yeah.
the way I interact with that material is going to be very, very different. Can I even access my prefrontal cortex now that because basically once adrenaline and cortisol increase,
Yep.
basically they're inverse. So as adrenaline and cortisol increase, your access to your prefrontal cortex decreases, right? And we start running a lot more things off the basal ganglia. In other words, we start running from memory, automatic habits and motor patterns and all of that kind of stuff, and they will take over. And that they've been designed to take over when you can't be human, right? Yep. In other words, when you're non-cognitive, when you're not able to really think, we still need you to be able to do these things to survive and get through your day. So let us take over. But that's not necessarily the best part of your brain for doing that thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so who we are when we do things is really, really important, particularly when those things require creativity, particularly when those things require growth or evolution or real serious thought, even logic, right? We need to be a different person to engage in that kind of thinking than we do to be the kind of person who is engaged in, let's say, something purely physical and low skill, right? If me going out for a jog, it doesn't mean I'm not an intelligent person, but me going out for a jog down the street, all I need is my motor faculties and a bit of awareness around me to make sure I don't fall down potholes, cars don't hit me, and all the rest of it. Me, when I'm sitting down to prepare my taxes or write an article or build a new web page that's going to sell 100 grand of my coaching or whatever, right? I need to be a different person to do that. And so it behooves each of us to kind of really think through the process, like, how do I get to that person in order to do this thing? Mm-hmm. So it's not a case of just I diarised an hour this afternoon to be, to write. Mm-hmm. You'd be better off diarising like 30 minutes to write and 30 minutes to get back to human. Right? So you go, okay, I'm gonna do what it takes. In my case, it might be breathing, it might be meditation, it might be listening to some music, it might be any number of things. But I'm going to get human first, and then I'm going to go and do the thing that the human would have done. Mm-hmm. And what you find is you'll do it much better, it'll be much faster, it'll come much easier, and the impact will be much greater.
Yeah.
Because even just a simple thing, like particularly when it comes to writing, mm-hmm. how you write when you're not in your human brain is reflective of how you talk when you're not in your human brain, right? So mm-hmm. the sentences don't come together as well. The kind of the grammar, it doesn't. You write it and you go, shit, I've spent an hour on this. It doesn't even sound like me, and it sounds like I've waffled on and kind of not made any sense by the end of it. Well, that's because basically the brain that you wrote it with wasn't the one that's needed for a high degree of linguistic skill.
Is that so when you use the question, who do you want to be, or who are you being, or who do you need to be, is that in essence, that's one of the ways that we get back to accessing that part?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, for the work that we did together in January, for example, mm-hmm. that work, all of that work was really building up to a really strong picture for each of the participants in that program to who do I want to be when things are happening? Yeah. And, and we covered everything from relationships to, the verbal Aikido and everything, but it's really about like, okay, shit is going to happen in life because that's what life is like. Like shit finds its way to show up every single day. Mm-hmm. And so we're not going to go through life pretending it's not going to happen. We're going to go through life saying it's coming, given that I know it's coming. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, it might be 3 years from now, but given that I know it's coming, who do I want to be when that happens? And the more we can prep that, and the more we can embed that in our kind of our mental pathways, the more we're going to actually be that person when the shit does happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Daniel just said these are all fantastic reminders and relevant now and always. Getting back to human first is foundational. Beautiful. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I could think of no better reminder to have in the crux of what we're in right now. Then that you are human, and it is in there, and it is accessible, and it needs to be accessible right now before we can lend it out to our clients who need that as well. Yeah. Absolutely.
And but just to build on to what you just said there, you are human, but you are also a mammal and you are also a reptile, right? Yep. Allow yourself, so instead of, a lot of people berate themselves for going reptile or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about not allowing yourself to fully express as all of those things, right? Whenever you cry at a movie, that's not the human that's crying at a movie, that's the mammal. Right? Mm-hmm. Kind of whenever you flinch and you jump back out of the road because a car comes whizzing around the corner, that wasn't the mammal, that wasn't the human, that was the reptile, right? All of them serve their place. And so
Yes.
we need to kind of learn what each of them does, celebrate each one of them's various aspects, and actually simply ask ourselves, when is it skillful and unskillful for that to show up, right?
Yeah.
Going for tea with your grandma and then the reptile coming out and you're kind of screaming and shouting at her because she made the wrong gravy, it's probably not the best time for the reptile, right? It's unskillful, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's simply the awareness that it's not a case of any of them being better or worse, right? The reptilian brain is not better or worse than the human brain,
Mm-hmm.
but it's brilliant at some things and it's not so good at other things. And so we want to basically give the reptile kind of its free reign when it kind of is going to suit it best in the middle of those emergencies, when fight, flight and freeze are necessary. Great. The rest of the time we flip back and forward because we don't stay human all the time, by the way, right? There's this very kind of thin hurdle that we're constantly jumping between being most of our experience of life is actually mammalian, right? That's where all that connection and when we jump across into the human brain and say, oh, I need some logic, I need some forward thinking, some creativity, and then we're back and it's just all about connection and connection and connection, and it says, okay, now that I've been connecting for a while, I want to think about this, I want to think about that. And so it's just being aware of what each area is for, as opposed to kind of turning any part into a villain or a victim or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think coming back to what you said about skill, right? Every part of our brain has a skill set that's pretty awesome and not always needed, and sometimes running, as you said, on autopilot. And but by the time we've responded to a threat, the threat is either past or we're perpetuating the threat, you know. And so if we can think about it, that's my understanding. If I can think about the threat, I'm not in threat. Because if I'm in threat, that's it, right? You're fleeing, you're fighting, you're freezing. It's done. So if you're able to consciously or cognitively reflect on it, then it's not present, right? We can certainly go to that part of our brain. We could conjure it up if we wanted to.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, if you can cognitively think through it, then you're not actually in deep in the threat. But it's very easy to create threat that's not there because the faculty of particularly the human brain is so powerful.
Yeah.
Right. The very same thing that gets us the house on the hill and helps us build the career of our dreams is the same thing that actually the exact same part of the brain that builds out our nightmares for us as well, and tells us that everything is going to go wrong, we're going to lose everything, and everyone we love is going to leave us or die.
Yeah.
That's
lovely.
That's the same part of the brain.
Oh, geez, we're tricky little creatures. I say we're funny little monkeys sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a few minutes left here. I want to open up and see if there's any other questions any of you have that are here with us live. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Just go ahead and pop it into the chat box while we're waiting those to pop in. Any other candidness you want to offer in this conversation so far, Dax?
Yeah, I think we as coaches, we have a brilliant and amazing opportunity right now to really show the world our worth. And I don't think that's going to come by showing up in the world as some form of instructor or some form of source of information or any of those kind of things. We've got the real opportunity right now to show up as sources of inspiration and examples of what happens when you do the real work. Right? So we don't need to nag, persuade, cajole, convince, any of that kind of stuff. We don't need to show up in the world as instructors. What we can say is not that we're super perfect role models or anything like that. In fact, I'm moving more and more away from the idea of anybody being a model or a role model, and instead just simply saying, I am an example of an approach. Right? That's how I consider myself. I'm an example of an approach to living. But people because of herd mentality, we pay attention to examples. And we as much as the herd part of us will look to see that everyone is racing down the aisle with their kind of rifles drawn to see who gets the last roll of toilet paper. There's also people who are going to look around them and say, what the hell is going on with that guy over there or that girl over there? Why are they not panicking? Why are they staying calm?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
And so we don't have to worry about marketing right now, and we don't have to worry about pushing and persuading and convincing or any of that kind of stuff. The best example, or be the best example you can be for the very stuff that you teach and you tell people is going to work in their lives. Just be it.
Yep.
In other words, who did I say I would be when this happens, right? Kind of go and be it. Like, I do do I still want to make money throughout all this? Yes, I don't want the taps to my bank account to switch off for the next 4, 5, 6 unforeseen period. I still want to make money. But am I going to start pushing and convincing and cajoling people that they really need my program now? And no, like, I'm just going to have normal conversations with people who feel ready to do something. I mean, what I would say is that during this period, there's language about distancing, and there's language about kind of isolation and all of this kind of stuff. Just bear in mind that both of those things are anathema. They run in opposition to the mammalian brain. So I'm not fighting that I agree with physical proximity to strangers and other people. Like, physical proximity, yes, gain that kind of distance, but don't fall for the trap of social distancing. In fact, what we need more of right now is more social proximity, right? Not physical proximity, social proximity, a greater depth of connection, right? So that people talk about more of what's actually important and more of what's meaningful to them, and like, start moving the agenda away from like all of the panic and everything else, and start modeling being someone who is actually able, or being an example of someone who is able to kind of live through this without the panic and the fear and everything else. If you want your coaching business to explode after this is all over, and perhaps even during it, then be the best example you can be of what it's like to live the very principles that you want to teach and charge people money for on the other side.
Yeah.
What we don't need more of it is convincing. We don't need to be adding social and financial stress to people that aren't in a place where they can absorb that. Right? Yeah. So just kind of be cool, serve a lot. Like, kind of, I'm not saying not to sell. I think if you've got the opportunity for people to continue buying, by all means, like, make offers to people, but put the focus more into service and a lot less into selling. And those people will be there, and they'll remember you once this is all over, and they come out the other side and they feel safe to reach into their wallets again. And it's not just about that, but it is about that too. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I don't know if it's helpful to hear. I mean, such a simple thing. I sent a quick little note to all of my clients and students who were currently enrolled or engaged in some kind of program, and lent out the offer to just be resourced. And so if they wanted to get on a call with me, if they wanted some great books to read while they're taking space, if they wanted to know other articles or content to read that would calm their nervous system, if they just wanted some connection to come here and be a part of this. And I had several people reply, and that I don't, even though they're clients, even though they know they can reach out, they have access to me, would not have utilized even the resource they're already utilizing had I not opened the door. So such a simple thing, but I ended up getting on the phone with a few clients yesterday and doing some email coaching, and just a way to connect. And so it's such an easy thing to do. It's not even about, well, how to create more prediction for myself in 4, 5, 6 weeks or whatever, coming back to who am I already in contact with? Who am I already engaged with? Who am I already in a role or a leadership position as a coach for? Who have I already dedicated myself to serving? And am I doing that? Like today, am I actually doing that? It's so simple, but so easy that we can get outside of that sphere and remember we do have influence, and we do have an opportunity to impart that in a really easeful and invitational way. Right. And that helped me come back to myself as well, if that's anything. But
which is really, you're asking yourself the question in different language, but who do I want to be when this happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so, the other part of this is that, I've had a couple of people today reach out to me and ask me if they could suspend their memberships to a few of the paid things that they're involved in with me. They've got clients dropping off the map and all that kind of stuff already, and they're saying, can I come back later? And of course the answer is yes. But here's the thing: many of the coaches that I work with, one of the things that they're always kind of telling me is that life is too hectic, it's too stressful, they never get time to do the things that would maybe propel them on to the next stage. Well, look, if you do find yourself in this position where your clients are kind of booking out and they're kind of saying, hey, I'll see you when it's all over. I do get that it's not a nice thing. But bear in mind now, if you've got more time on your hands, that website you've always wanted to build, that membership portal you've always wanted to build, that manifesto you always wanted to write, that video series, like all of that stuff can be created.
Yep.
And so we don't have, like, the easiest thing to do would be go, oh my God, my days are empty. No one's signing up for anything. No one's giving me any money at the moment, and sit around going, well, screw it. And they're kind of watching daytime TV and sulking that nothing's happening. Or we can say, well, actually, you know what? I've got an extra 10 hours a week back on my hands. Yeah. The things that I always told myself I didn't have time to do, I've got the time now. I'm going to dig into that and get that done. Yeah. Likewise, you know, anything that you can do to move yourself back into the human brain. Learn a new language. A guitar that's been sat gathering dust in the corner for ages. Say, you know what? Like, if nothing else comes out of this, by the end of it all, I'm going to be able to play 3 of my favorite songs on a guitar. Like, these are choices we can make, and I'm not saying it from a naive place that, you know, let's be all happy clappy and kind of wait for it. Not at all. But it's just it's a very realistic thing. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get 10 hours, you can either add 10 hours of fretting to your time, right? It's 10 hours sitting there going, oh my God, how shit is this and how bad's it all going to get? Or you can say, well, I've got the 10 hours I've always wanted to build that website, I've got now. Yeah. The 10 hours I've always wanted to learn the guitar or learn a language or do something, I've got now. I can do.
Yep. So many books. I'm so excited. Piles of books. Awesome. One last question here. Dean said, in regards to living what you believe, what is the best way to show that so people can see?
The best way is ultimately, this is one on the few occasions where I'm going to say, just do it, right? Yeah. But they're going to pick up through your language. Like, think about, you know, if you're writing articles, like, what are you sharing? Are you sharing more gloom and doom? Or are you going the other way and trying to be fake happy clappy, right? Fake positive? Or are you just saying, yeah, this scared the shit out of me too, but after it did, and after I found my feet again, here's the 3 things I reminded myself of, and here's what I'm doing now, and here's how I and my family are getting through this situation. You know, kind of be the human you that you really are. Yeah. But also, you know, if you want to tie this into what I would say a more business perspective now, just kind of so that you're thinking with your business head on, make sure that you're tying that back to the very principles and philosophy that you preach. Right? Make sure it's really clear. Like, you know, my philosophy in life is that you don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free, but you do have to be all that you are, right? And so this call is an example of that. Right, I'm just being all that I am. I'm not filtering myself. Right, but I'm sharing the stuff that's important to me. I've got a whole bunch of principles that I'm incessantly sharing. Yep. Right, and if you do that, that is you being there kind of in the world as the kind of the best possible example. What I will say is, don't try to. I always know when I'm not really being me. Right, when I'm not really being me, I'm trying to convince you of something. I'm trying to persuade you of something. I'm trying to have you in agreement with what I hold to be valuable and true and all the rest of it, right? When I'm really being me, I'm just kind of being naked and being as impactful as I can. I'm like, my job is not to persuade you that what I'm saying is right. My job is to make sure that I've said some stuff that gives you the opportunity to appraise whether the way you're going about things is right for you or not. In other words, skillful or unskillful. Based on what Dax said, no, he said that. I don't really agree with him on that, and I'm quite happy with how I'm doing that. Well, I still see that as a job done. I still see that as brilliant. Yeah. So, you know, be on the lookout for persuasion, convincing, kind of trying to push people and force people into ways of thinking. Be also on the lookout for over instruction, becoming an instructor at this time. Now, initially the reptilian mind loves that, because the reptilian mind loves nothing better than a black and white binary, yes, no, tell me what to do, what am I supposed to do? But very soon basically the reptile bites you on the arse, right? Because it doesn't like being told what to do consistently. Yeah. So, you know, trying to avoid the kind of, you should do this and you should stop doing this and start doing that, and start thinking of it. Just like what I always like to remind coaches is that very rarely in your coaching sessions, or for most of the coaches I've ever worked with and met, very rarely are you point blank explicitly making a declarative statement to a client, you should do this. Yeah. Right? Very rarely do you do it. And so if you don't do it in coaching and you save it for very special occasion where you do think, do you know what, I need to make a declarative challenge here, boom. If that's how you do your coaching, show up in the world in the same way. So it's not my job to make declarations to other people. I make them to myself all the time. Like when I'm sitting here watching like what I seem to be dumb shit, on on the news, and I go, oh, dumb shit. But I don't go out into the world then or write posts saying you guys have got to stop stocking up on toilet paper. I personally, like the kind of the human part of me that sits at home who's not a coach, when I take my coach out, I'll go, there's some dumb shit going on right now. But I'm not about to show up in the world and start being a kind of an armchair critic of everyone who's doing it, because I understand it literally is dumb shit, but because it's the reptile making the decision.
Right. It's not helpful to show up and point it out, right?
Right.
If that's not what you know, if you normally do that, great. What I'm hearing is continue to be who you are. And there's, maybe this is taking it a little unnecessarily far, but I think of like, what I saw yesterday with some of my clients was that they were looking, whether I was aware of it or not, for a little bit of stability from the sources where stability is typically found. And so if I showed up panicked, and I'm not a panicky person, and I can be rational. We turned a little reptilian yesterday and really sat down and thought about, well, how do we want to approach this, and what's being asked of us, and how can we respond appropriately, and what is realistic right now, and we'll go and take care of that. We'll come back. That's me, and handing that out, that stability out, because that's how I normally show up. I didn't realize until I got some feedback that was exactly what people were kind of looking for in their environment. So continue to be who you are, no matter who that is. That is predictable for people. That is calming. That is very hopeful. And you don't really have to say anything. Just, again, are you demonstrating who you want to be and how you said you would be, regardless of what's happening around you?
At a base level, the first question the brain is always asking itself is, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe?
Yeah.
If it hears yes, it goes, I'm safe. Then it asks its next question, which will be something to do with relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Am I loved?
And it say, do people love me?
Connected?
Do they value me? Do they care for me? And
Yes.
if you say yes, the next question it will say, well, where could I go next, and what could I do? Right? That's basically that's the hierarchy. That's the triune brain in action. First and foremost, am I safe?
Yep.
So just don't contribute to being somebody else's version of unsafe.
Yeah.
Or as much as possible. I mean, that they're gonna deem you to be unsafe based on their own frameworks, but don't engage. Right. Don't play the game. Let's step out of the game. I'm not playing that game. I'll leave you to that one.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. I adore you. I'm so grateful to connect to you. It's calming to me to connect with you. I think I'm going to spend the day learning and getting caught up on my own education and just, hanging out here. Thank you all to everyone who joined us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this wasn't going to be a live event, but again, in light of, I think some people desiring connection, it's easy for us to turn that on and make it really simple for people to pop in and get a chance to be a part of it. So thank you. I loved it. Great riffing as always. I trust how this will always turn out. Great. Appreciate it. And we'll make the recording available. I'll make it available to you today. I'll make it available to my community in the next day or two so people can continue to listen to this.
Much love, guys. Thank you very, very much for being part of our weird and wonderful conversations.
As always. Awesome. All right, guys. Take care. Do what you need to do. Reach out if you need anything. Bye.
Bye.